Well, do you remember 1935? Were you alive then? Well, my thinking is that maybe Joe Biden was, or at least he remembers it. Let's see, 35 to 2000 is 65 years, and Biden is 20. That's 85 years. Well, Biden's not quite that old, so he was relatively young at that time. But what was important about 1935? Well, FDR decided to get out of the Depression. Everybody was friggin' broke. Everybody. Remember, it was depression. It wasn't the one that happened under Obama, which was a near depression that Bush left behind. This was the Hoover Depression. They referred to poor people living in tent cities as Hoovervilles in honor of President Hoover. And Hoover Dam was named after President Hoover because he started it, but didn't get it going early enough to get a lot of people working. But what did happen in 35 is pretty telling. Well, what happened in 35 was kind of after the fact, but because in 1933, President Roosevelt ended prohibition. Ended prohibition. So people felt pretty good about that. They could go out and get a drink. Early in March of 33, he ended it. Beer and wine could be sold. And he ended the whole liquor thing and prohibition for people later in 1933. But in 35, what he did was he told the people, if you're loyal to this country, pay for it. And the more money you make, pay for it. If you make no money, don't worry about it. These wealthy people who can make money $1 million, the first $1 million, it pays an ordinary tax. The next dollar of the next toward the next million, you pay 75% of that first dollar. That was a 75% tax rate that FDR did. We've already heard Joe Biden say he's going to put a tax rate on based on after you make your first 400,000, the next dollar. And what the rate's going to be, the percentage is going to be, he hasn't announced yet, but the rate's going to jump up pretty heavily on people making 400,000 or more. Not before that, up to that. So that did what? What did that tax rate of 75% under FDR do? And why? And what it did is pretty important. It put the government back in business. It could pay for things. It could do things. It could help people. It created food lines that could provide food for ordinary people, warehouse food, so forth. Bags of potatoes, bags of beans, and bags of survival for ordinary people all over the country. And then the WPA, Workers Protection Administration. So all those things were done with that wealth tax to pay for government and believing in government so that government could help people. Who can believe in a government that doesn't tax the wealthy and lets the corporations off the hook? You can't trust a corporation to pay for your government, to run the bridges and the roads and all of that, because the government has to do it for them. Oh, yeah, it's the government that does that. The contractors follow on what the government decides, and they go from there. But the government's bad. That's Ronald Reagan. Yeah, government's the problem. Get rid of it. So what happened to that wealth tax? Oh, it continued. It went up to 91% in 1930. No. It was 1941. What happened in 1941? World War II. Well, the wealth tax meant you could pay for the war, or at least try to. 41%, 91% in 1941. What happened to that tax in 1942? It went to 92%. It stayed to 92% after the first million now. It stayed all the way to 1960. 3 presidents supported that. FDR, Truman, who followed FDR, and then Eisenhower, a Republican, followed them. 92%. What happened in those convening years from 41 to 1960? 60. Well, ever heard of the electric grid? Hoover Dam is part of the electric grid. The the TV, the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is in Tennessee, is part of the electric grid. And those two electric grids, the one for Hoover, electrified the West generally across the board. And the TVA in the central part of the country, or central eastern part of the country, electrified farmland and everything else that had no electricity up until 1950 or so. So it revolutionized everything. And the building, let's see now, what could we do without today? Could we do without the interstate highway system? Oh, you think we could? You think you could get around okay without it? I don't think so. But let's see what you say. Could you get to Atlanta with what? Buses? Interstate highway system. It connected all these cities. The center, they call it Atlantic, the new New York in the South, the new South New York, because it's so, and interstate travel makes it possible. Interstate highway system reconnected the entire country, paid for by the wealth tax of 92% under Eisenhower, 8 years of a Republican. He built the interstate highway system, or at least finished it, most of it, which was started first under FDR in 1935 in Oklahoma. It got finished in the 1950s and so forth. So we had a wealth tax, a wealth tax, a wealth tax. So when Eisenhower left office, Kennedy became the president. Kennedy lowered the wealth tax. He lowered it down to about 75%. Some people said it was 80, but the point was, Google it, look it up, see if this character called Augi and the Edge knows what he's talking about. It's not about opinion now. This is a fact. This is fact, folks. Not, you can't put down fact with just opinion and just say, oh, he says that, therefore that's just his opinion. I can research it, I can find it, I can prove it, and so can you. Please do. Please verify what I'm saying. Don't believe the crap that any opinion's like any other. They're not. Uninformed people are very prone to bullshitting. I'm not bullshitting. So your wealth tax continued under Kennedy, and then under Nixon for first term and second term. And when Ford stepped in under the last term of Nixon, he continued the wealth tax. And when he was elected, he continued for another 4 years until Carter came into office, and Carter continued it. That was from 1935, a wealth tax between 90% and 75%. All those years, Republican and Democratic presidents doing this together, two separate parties doing the same damn thing, keeping the government alive and controlling it. Then you have a person comes along and he runs and smiles and says, oh, I'm going to make everything better. I did wonderful things in California as governor. My name's Ronald Reagan. Well, this guy in 1980 knew about Ronald Reagan. And I went before local TV and spoke for 5 minutes because I said Ronald Reagan will wreck this country. He wrecked California. They were number 2 in education. He put them number 18. He ruined their tax system and made property values go through the roof where people couldn't afford to live there anymore. Early on, he was governor there, replaced by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was a much better governor. But Reagan wrecked everything he touched. He had a bad history in the military, which I could go into, but I won't. I know things about him. But he said government is the problem, not the solution. And when you say government's the problem, they're saying get rid of the problem. And Newt Gingrich came along and said, let government die on the vine. It's a problem, get rid of it. The Republican Party from Reagan to the present time has been on a persistent debt path, hard to get out of because government is the problem, folks. No, government's your friend. Government keeps your roads fixed, puts your bridges safe, puts your health care to a certain extent protected, regulates things so your water's clean, whether it's federal or local government. It's called government. And if you hate government of the people, by the people, for the people, you hate yourself. What a sad commentary. If someone goes around saying that we should protect the rich over the poor, what a fool would say that. Oh, Rush Limbaugh. Yeah, that's who. The guy that was addicted to opioids to where he almost died from the use. And he had a radio voice. He was he was a radio announcer for the Kansas City Royals. Well, that made him important. But he got on radio and he made a lot of true believers that Reagan was right, the true hero of the Republican Party, the true destroyer of republicanism, of Lincoln republicanism, the guy that ended slavery, the guy that built the Transcontinental Railroad, that was Lincoln in 6 years. That's telegraph and rail, east to west, in 1860 to 1866. He did all of that and then got murdered for it. Well, those are my thoughts. And Joe Biden wants to be like FDR, to bring us back to making government work for us, to help all of us, and to be truly democratic and not autocratic. Not one person deciding everything for everyone. All of us sharing in responsibility and having elected people act for us in behalf of us, not people that we have to be employed by to get anything done. That's autocratic corporatism. Anyway, I'm for I'm for the people, of the people, and by the people. Thank you very much, and Google me to see if my facts are straight. It's not just a matter of opinion I gave you. I gave you facts that are provable. If you find me off by a percentage point here or there, tell me what it is. I'll be glad to discuss it. Be open to the conversation. Please let me know. Thank you very much.